Welcome, everyone. I'm currently away on vacation and will be back Wednesday, October 22nd. Today, your host will be Larry Goldberg. Larry co-founded several companies and is now an active venture capital investor.
Brian, how are you today?
Good morning, Larry. What a good day. I mean, I'm doing good. I know a lot of people are very upset, some apoplectic about the Model Y S that we saw, but I think it's exactly what I was expecting, and I think it'll be a good start to that trim level.
Well, let's separate the trim of the Model Y and the Model 3 and the pricing and deal with these two separately. Firstly, what about the trim? What do you think about the decisions that were made about the trim?
Well, so I had a pretty good idea what they would do. I just had to think about what would you cut? What can you cut? And as a guideline, I looked at what they did when Tesla made a China Model 3 exclusively for the Mexican market. Cloth seats, fewer speakers, trim out the bells and whistles.
Right.
So you've got no laminated glass, so not as good of sound insulation, not as good of a security deterrent for the smash and grabs, which are increasingly rare. But all the things that were cut, I expected. I didn't expect the frunk to be reduced in size so much. I think that's ridiculous. I didn't expect them to remove autopilot, but I don't know how many people are even using autopilot. I think a lot of people would jump straight to FSD. And as a result, we got a $40,000 price tag, which is what I expected, $39,990. I got it on the dot because I've done enough of these. I've followed enough. When you and I saw each other in Texas last was the Cybertruck reveal. We've seen each other since then, but when we met in Texas, and I also got that one to the penny because, of course, they would go $10 under the, at the time, IRA cutoff. That's what they wanted to do. So I think the features they cut are reasonable. I think a lot of people don't care about the ambient lighting or the light bar or the indirect brake lighting. The adaptive high beams, I kind of wish they'd kept those.
Yeah.
I don't know how much extra matrix headlights cost. It is a big difference in price, I imagine. But just getting rid of the laminated glass is going to save weight, save cost. The wheels are 18-inch steel instead of 19-inch aluminum. That's going to save cost. Add some weight back in, but they managed to trim 123 pounds out of the car in total, meaning they put in a smaller battery and are getting almost the same range.
Yeah, so, I mean, they've made some, I think, fairly clear, I mean, very understandable decisions. There's nothing there that I would have had a particular problem with. In fact, you know, if you look at that car and you compare it to, I don't know, a Honda Accord or a RAV4, that's how a basic RAV4 comes. You know, in fact, it's probably got more, it has got more luxury than a out-of-the-box RAV4. I think the number of variants are going to, significantly less because with a Honda, you can buy all these options that get loaded on in huge pricing increases. So here you have, clear choice, the economy version or the standard version and then the luxury version. And I think that's the Tesla model, and it brings simplicity and clarity. Both for the vendor and for the customer. And the customer actually tends to spend far less that way, which is kind of, counterintuitive from a manufacturer's point of view. All right. And then what about pricing?
The pricing, $39,990, to me is introductory pricing. I don't know how many people are buying a Tesla this week. My guess is not very many. I think they all did it last month. I think if they wanted the cheapest Tesla they could get, those buyers have already pulled the trigger. Yeah. The only people I see buying a Tesla this week are those who didn't need a car 2 weeks ago, but for whatever reason do today. It is not as cheap as the base RAV4, but once you factor in what you're going to spend in gas over 10 years, the price starts looking better. It is probably less expensive to own and operate than those cars with a lower sticker price. And that's assuming you could even get them at that sticker price. A lot of dealerships won't stock inventory of base model vehicles because why would they? There's better margin to be had. And we can always brag that we've got a cheap car, even if we don't actually sell it.
Yeah, and then there's the issue of financing and how the car is financed. So that, that actually changes somewhat. And here's the puzzle for me. Tesla have never really flexed the leasing muscle very significantly. And it was a muscle that I felt that they had the resort to, the very significant resort to. And it troubles me that they still, to this day, are not really flexing that muscle. How do you feel about that?
So I've never leased a car. I've never found a time when it would have made sense for me to lease a car. I understand that it's a big thing. I understand a lot of people do. I understand that in Germany, it's how most people get cars, apparently.
Yeah.
But I don't, unfortunately, have an opinion on it. But I do think the all of the above approach is always the best way to go. And I think the fact that we haven't seen lease pricing on it yet tells me they're doing some tinkering, trying to maximize it. And I do think there's enough margin in this car that if nobody's buying it by the end of the month, they can cut it 1,000, maybe 2, or I don't know, more likely give you a free color or something like that to get them moving again.
But it begs the question of the market size. There is a very significant portion of the market that's financed, very significant. If you go into the traditional auto industry, I don't know what the number is, but I would be shocked if it was less than 50%, and I wouldn't be shocked if it was as much as 70%. So if you buy a Tesla, you have two choices: cash or go for outside financing, go to outside financing. And yet Tesla could flex that financing both. And I know that Elon doesn't want to lever his balance sheet with auto financing, and I couldn't agree with that more. But the opportunity to build, a very significant leasing book of business that you're able to sell the entire book, in tranches over time as you accumulate it, given, their ability to build that book of business, it just seems to me a lost opportunity. And I think it's affecting their sales. Look, there was a point in time that there was quite a long point in time where Tesla didn't have to look for sales. They had to look to production. Those days are over. Now they have to look for sales. So when you have, a $7,500 price increase across the board almost, then you have to go, they have to pull out all the armaments, every single, weapon in your armamentarium. So that's why I'm a little disappointed about it. And gosh, they've got such a powerful balance sheet. They could carry, 3 months, 6 months of paper before they had to sell it. And they could, really do a number in terms of leasing it.
Well, so I was a loan officer back in the day. I worked for a big bank called Washington Mutual for most of my career.
Oh, I remember Washington Mutual very well.
Yeah, they imploded like nobody's business.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yes. And what we would do is on the loans we would write, they were sold, typically pre-sold before we even wrote them. All we had to do is ensure that we met our internal underwriting guidelines, which apparently increasingly we weren't doing. And then they'd be bundled off and sold. So we weren't actually carrying the paper for any amount of time, maybe days at most, rarely over a month, I imagine. So before the first payment is due, it would already be sold. Washington Mutual kept the servicing on the loan so that your payments would always go to Washington Mutual, which people loved. They thought it meant that we were holding the paper as well. But I don't see it being a big risk. I think that they could absolutely get more margin if they had their own GMAC, or I guess it's called Ally now, but if they had their own captive finance division, I think it would have tremendous value and would open up revenue potential and other opportunities as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I fully appreciate Elon's view on carrying the paper, but you're right. I mean, you don't have to carry the paper. You need a fairly good balance sheet because anybody buying from you will want to understand your level of resource in terms of initiating the paper and your standing in the financial community. But once they buy the paper, they're on the hook. But so I'm puzzled by it, and I don't understand why that tool is not being used. But getting back to pricing in general, I think there's a general sense of disappointment in the pricing amongst the followers. I don't share that general sense. I think the pricing has got leverage to. I mean, let me say they've got flexibility within the pricing that they've announced. And I think that's what you're saying as well, right?
That's what I am saying. I think if they have to lower it 1,000 or two, they can do it. But a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I wanted it to be 30 or 35,000." I don't see the possibility for that. We want to remain margin positive. I know Elon said they could sell cars at a break even and still make money over the long term, but why throw money away if you don't have to?
Yeah.
And we've got some downward pressure on pricing coming up. We may see, first is the economies of scale. That's going to help. But the next is the administration has announced a potential pause for relief on tariffs for U.S. automakers. Now, most of Tesla's goods are domestic, but that would mean perhaps they could start getting LFP battery packs from China without tariff again. That would mean you could absolutely make the Model 3 in an LFP, but probably also the Model Y and cut another 1,000, 3,000 right there. So between the parts, the potential for that, and there's a partnership with LG that's been announced, a $4 billion agreement to buy LFP cells made domestically. That could also improve pricing. And we may see them remove the glass off the roof. It's already covered. It's already not acoustic glass. They could at some point say, you know what? No, we're making enough of these. It's okay to tool up, paint some steel black so it still looks like the glass roof and use that instead, or maybe carbon composite plastic instead. There's a bunch of ways you could go, and they could even make the range a little shorter if they needed to. So there's ways to make the cost of goods sold lower, and we may see that. The other thing I want to say about $39,990 is if you go back to 2018 when the Model Y was unveiled, that would have been $31,000.
Yep.
$31,000 in 2018 adjusted for inflation is $40,000. So if you'd have announced this in 2018 at $31,000 and said, look, we're going to keep it at this price. These are the specs, the ones we saw yesterday, and we're only going to increase the price by the rate of inflation, people would have been over the moon. But what people are forgetting is everything's gotten more expensive.
Absolutely. When they talked about a $35,000 car 3 or 4 years ago, this is $35,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, your point.
And it's a lot more car than what they were offering, what they were hoping to get for that price.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I'm pretty comfortable where we are. I think we're gonna, I think as you've pointed out, we're probably going to have a rocky quarter. That rocky quarter is, I think everybody in the EV industry is going to have an adjusting period in the quarter. But I think announcing these two cars, is very important and I think a great thing, a really great thing. So I'm good with it. So you haven't driven the car yet, have you?
No, certainly not.
Yeah.
But I would say that I talked today with Joe Tegmeyer, the drone pilot in Texas, who was one of the select few who had a chance to get up close and personal. He drove it, not just around the Texas site, but he got to take it out on the highway, because what he was really looking for is how bad is the noise? Is it bad? Yeah. And he said, it's not. It's fine. It's completely acceptable. So that means that whatever they cut wasn't too much. It is not as smooth of a ride as the Model Y with the dampened suspension
Yeah,
and all that,
yeah.
but it's got more rubber and less wheel, which softens the ride up a bit right there. He said the ride was fine. I mean, the car was fine. It's not as quick, but a lot of people don't need it to be as quick. It doesn't have, the second row touchscreen. We have that in the Model 3. We never use it, almost never. Ventilated seats, you don't really need those when you have cloth seats. So a lot of the things they cut, power folding second row, how often would I use that? It's fine. I have the strength to fold a seat on my own. So
Yeah,
I
and
think,
after all,
yeah,
if you had a Model Y from 4 years ago, you had to fold the seat anyway,
yeah,
and you paid $50,000 for it.
yes, yes. If only 50,000.
Yeah, yeah,
My
yeah, yeah.
Model Y is from 2023, October of 23. It's its second birthday coming up, and we paid 52 with the third row. We got no options except the third row, which we absolutely had to have. So it was, about 52,000. And this is the new Y is a better car than the old Y. The new Y Affordable, the YS, is a better car than the old Model Y.
And what's interesting is, I bought a Model 3 back in 2018, one of the, very first off the line. I mean, maybe the first 5,000 or 5,000th off the line, but it had a worse suspension than this car. It had, same glass as this car. I mean, it didn't have as good a sound system as this car. It didn't have a rear video screen either, and it had
It didn't have hardware for.
didn't have hardware for, and FSD 14.x, which is coming to it. So, I mean, this is a steal of a deal. This is a steal of a deal.
I'm with you on that. When you look at the price, Nick from Investing Against the Grain was on our show, on the live show on Wednesday, and he was saying this is not cheap enough. 5,000 less is not cheap enough, but I think the market segmentation is fine. No, it is more expensive than the Model Y was last month with the federal credit. That was
Right.
expected. We didn't, they didn't have $7,500 of margin to remove to still sell the car. So this is, to me, and he said, well, if you can't afford $72 more on your payment, maybe you shouldn't be buying a new car. Well, that's true, but which $72? Because a lot of people will stretch. The Tesla stretch is real. Are you going to go for that extra? If you can handle an extra $50 on your payment, but not an extra 120, 130,
Yeah.
this car could be for you.
Yeah, and the amount of money you're saving on gas is just and service. People forget the service aspect of it, but services are very expensive, and not just in money, but in time, and in discombobulates your day. I mean, it's just nasty. The whole service business with a gas car, although they have improved somewhat, but it's still pretty bad.
If you commute, you probably have a 9 to 5 job, and 9 to 5 is most of the hours the oil change place is open. So are you going to go after work? Are you going to sacrifice your entire lunch break and come back late? Are you going to try and get there before they close after work when everyone else is doing the same? It is an hour or two out of your life every few thousand miles, and I do not miss it.
Right.
I did go to Jiffy Lube recently. I got a rock chip repaired there. I hope they're pivoting hard and smart to not go out of business entirely.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think I don't see them hurting yet. I think it's a long way from where they're going to be hurting. I think robotaxi is going to have a lot more impact on them than the sale of EVs, you know. So we'll see.
Yeah.
What is the average transaction price of a average new vehicle in the United States today?
48,000 last I checked. Pretty stable around
Gone up a little
48.
bit. It's 49,077 now, according to Sam Chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at that price, this is a pretty good competitive price. So there you go.
You could get this car with FSD for less than the average cost.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
Well, and people aren't appreciating FSD. Nick had a great idea he shared on the live stream this week where he said, okay, fine. Tesla doesn't want to advertise. Do this for me, please. Make an amazing short video about FSD, how easy it is, how great it is, and just play it in showrooms. Just have it on the screen for people who came in to look at the car anyway, to look at it and say, oh my gosh, maybe that is something I want to at least try out, at least use the free trial when you get it. I hope when version 14 comes out widely that we get perhaps another month of free trial for the people who need to be convinced. I don't need to be convinced. Version 11 I thought was fun and interesting, but only really helpful on road trips. 12 I thought got real good to the point where I could see myself paying for it if I had to.
Yeah.
And 13 is to the point where it is indispensable.
I
just
agree with
works.
that 100%. So I just come off a 2,500 mile, actually 3,000 mile road trip over the last, in fact, finished just an hour or two ago. And, and my wife came along on the trip. I mean, we had just, 2 days of isolation each way from the whole world. And we could communicate because there was no driving by either party at any time, no interventions at all. Certainly not any that, were safety related, and certainly not any that were related to the vehicle, not doing what it's supposed to be doing. I mean, the only issues were parking and, changing your mind about a particular direction or whatever. But man, it's like a different world. It's like a different world. It's like a different activity.
My number one disengagement is, oh, you know what? I do want to go there. Hit the blinker, get off the highway, and I'm done. The thing with the long drives, 2 years ago when I went out to Michigan, on the way back, I would get on the phone and just call people, just chat, I got to do something. And my wife said, I'm in Oklahoma. I'm heading west. I'm going 85 miles an hour. She's like, oh, should you really be on the phone? It's like, well, first of all, I can see about 100 miles ahead of me and there's no one there. It's straight, it's flat.
Yeah.
And I'm not the one driving. Well, this year in Michigan, you got to meet my family. They were there and they got to experience the long road trips too, across the middle of the country, and how painless it is, how hours can just fly by because you're listening to music. Do you have Spotify or YouTube Music or Apple Music in the car? Hit the button, say play any song you can think of, and it'll play it. Put on a podcast. And now if you want, have a chat with Grok, which I've done from time to time. If I want to learn about a place I'm going or the people that I'm going to meet when I'm there and what they do and what their business is, Grok can get me background information on that painlessly. And it makes driving used to be a chore. And I'm sure at some point in your life, you've done 10, 12-hour stretches where you're micromanaging the entire drive and you get there and you need a day to recover. Those days are gone. I'll just arrive sleepy.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I drove the length and breadth of Europe from the southwestern corner to the northeastern corner. And there's no FSD in Europe. There's something called, it's just a joke. It's just terrible. And man, it's like a whole different world. It's a whole, it's still better in a Tesla, but man, it's tough going. It's tough going,
I think it is my hope that Tesla does restore autopilot to the Model Y S. I think cutting that out is too much. I mean, there's no cost associated with it. I understand you want to push people to FSD, but if the whole point of this is affordability, $100 a month extra is a big ask. So I don't know how well that would, and if it is safer, if autopilot is safer than human operated, I'd prefer that they just put it back in. And that's something we may see them do at some point.
Yeah, I have a thesis that robotaxi is going to be the best advertisement for FSD. I think once people have driven in a robotaxi and they realize what FSD really is, I think it's going to change their point of view. And I think that's when we're going to see a huge take-up. Of course, we're going to need, whatever it is that takes us to that level of automation. But once we get that level of automation, I think the game is over. I think that's when people will start buying it in large quantities. And that's how it's going to happen, I think. What do you think about the thesis that the Model 3 is going to start selling again in larger quantities?
I don't think the problem is the price. I think the problem is sedans are not very popular in the US. What I did see is it looks like these models, at least the Model Y, we know is going to be made in Berlin. We saw an announcement that they're getting everything ready to start making the slightly more affordable Model Y in Europe. This is going to sell in every market. Reducing the price by 5,000 increases it. Earlier, you mentioned that this could be a rough quarter for Tesla because they pulled so many sales forward from Q4 into Q3. But that's only the US. That's not internationally where most of Tesla's sales are. Less than half of Tesla sales are in the US. So that means those markets aren't affected by the IRA. They might as well not even know it ever existed. So I think that we will see any model they add to Europe, whether it's the YL or the YS. And by the way, I also accurately predicted the name, but for the wrong reason. I thought it was going to be Y large and Y small, and it's Y standard. So I did the math wrong, but I still came up with the right answer. I'll take partial points for that. I think in other markets, these cars will have even more demand than they do here.
Yeah. The question is, will they bring the standard model to China?
I don't know.
That's a very important question because that's a volume question.
It is on Tesla. Tesla China's kind of tapped out in terms of capacity. They don't need to grow their production and deliveries the way the Germany and Texas factories do. So I think it may take a little longer to get to China. They've just started the YL. I think the YL should be sold in all markets. I think it will be sold in all markets. The only question is when.
Yeah, because we're getting a real disconnect between the models in China and the models, what we think will be in Berlin and what is in the US. And I think that's fair enough. You have to sell what sells in a particular market. And you're right about China's being tapped out. What are the chances of expanding that factory, another factory in China, in your view?
High. I think the odds are quite good. I think the reason they haven't been able to do it is because of trade challenges. There are a lot of countries that are restricting companies from China from just importing on an even playing field. They want to impose additional tariffs because China's got so much manufacturing power and also so much state support. Those two things make letting Chinese cars into your market dangerous. If you look at a country that doesn't have a domestic auto industry to protect, where cars are brought in on an even playing field, the Chinese cars are doing very well.
Incredibly
because they are so much cheaper than certainly Volkswagen or Toyota, but really anyone. So there's reason to be concerned. Could they build another factory? Yeah. I think they would get probably the same kind of favorable treatment they got the first time, which is to say, we'll let you have the land at a tremendous high cost. That's just how it is. You're not getting land for free. We'll give you a, certain period of time tax abatement. I think that would be reasonable to expect to get that again. And then, as long as you hit your targets, you get to have the factory here. And we know that China manufacturing is very, very good. It's fast.
So China allowed Tesla to build that factory as a pathfinder for Chinese manufacturers. Where Tesla is struggling compared to China is in the battery technology. I mean, it's quite clear that China is pulling away in battery technology, and Tesla has been less adept, I think is the word, in terms of evolving its battery technology. And I think that's the area that we need more support in terms of Chinese technology. On the other hand, Tesla's manufacturing methodologies have extended quite significantly. And I think with the Cybercab, we're going to see that even extend further. So it seems like an even trade for China and Tesla to go to the next step, adding another factory, maybe adding a battery factory would seem to be the right step for them. Anyway.
The trick is batteries are very tricky to make. They're very difficult.
Very difficult.
We saw Panasonic spin up the 2170 plant in partnership with Tesla in Reno with minimal effort. There were some delays. The delays were caused by the fact that Tesla said, we're going to be selling 500,000 cars by this date. And Panasonic said, okay, sure you are. And then they did. And they're like, oh my gosh, now we have to scramble to get enough batteries because, of course. So then Tesla went to build their own 4680s. We've seen how bedeviling and vexing that has been. They've struggled to get that line up to the efficiencies that they expected at all, let alone on time. And even when it came to commissioning the LFP factory in Sparks, using secondhand equipment from CATL with the help of CATL engineers who installed it, it still took longer than expected. And we don't yet know what the output is of the factory. So it is making batteries of this precision is very difficult, and it is not one of Tesla's core competencies. So if you look at the kind of money CATL and BYD and LG and others have poured into R&D, I just don't think Tesla should be expected to have the kind of output they do. And you're right, the technology is moving forward. They've got LFP cells that are good for 500,000, million miles that outperform lithium ion from even a few years ago in terms of watt hours per kilogram. It is China is absolutely leading on the battery front.
And charging rate. Charging rate is becoming the big differentiator. So
Absolutely.
That's very important. All right. So I think we've come to a fairly good perspective on the new models. I think I'm very happy. You're very happy. There's some grumpiness out there. And
There is.
And I think, guys, get over it. This is a $35,000 car. When we talked about the $35,000 car 2 years ago, this is it, because inflation is, that's what we're living with.
Yes.
So I say let's revisit this in a year or two, because I think we'll be very pleased by the final result.
I think so too.
Thank you, Brian.
Of course. Thank you, Larry.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.